What is up, everybody? Welcome to Getting Spooky with Sean. Today, we are here with my dad. What's happening, Dad?
What's going on? How's everything going?
It's good. It's early. It's 9 a.m. I don't want to be awake.
It's 1 a.m. on my side of
What? You mean 1 p.m.? Yeah. I don't want to be awake, but I got a duty to the people.
town.
Right. And so I hit my dad up a few days ago. I said, "Hey, I wanna hear your ghost stories, man. I've heard a lot of them, but I haven't heard all of them, and I wanna hear what he's got to say about some things and points of view, perspective. I think that it would be pretty cool to hear other people's perspective and points of view on certain things. So, yeah. So, guys, today, well, Getting Spooky with Sean, if you didn't see the last episode, Getting Spooky with Sean is where I bring people on. We talk about paranormal experiences. We talk about certain things that they've been through. We also bullshit about, like, horror movies and stuff like that, because I'm a horror movie buff. And so, yeah. So,
Horror movies are a big part of my upbringing.
yeah, definitely. Getting into it, what's your favorite horror movie, if you had to pick one?
Well, I'm just going to go all-time favorite. Well, there's two of them really that are all-time for me, but the one that always sticks out is always, hands down, is always going to be the first guy.
Yeah.
The other one that I grew up with was the first Friday the 13th. There's reasons for those two being, and it's not the movie as a whole. There are certain things in the movie that scared the living shit out of me.
Yeah, definitely. And what was it about The Exorcist that scared the shit out of you?
Everything? No, I mean, there was things about that movie. I know facts about the movie. In fact, I lived like maybe 2 blocks from where the actual property was. Some years ago, in Mount Rainier, Maryland, and I know facts and everything else. So when I saw the movie, the thing that scared me the most is that it hit home real close. It was Georgetown. It was filmed in Georgetown. In the steps, I've been on Exorcist steps. I used to drink at a bar around the corner from there, and a lot of things come close that hit close with me there. And one of them is the church that the two priests reside at. They didn't die in real life except by old age. And the church was right down the street, the Catholic church. And it gets really, when it gets that close to home, it starts making you think a lot.
Yeah, definitely. And I know that I just watched the first Exorcist a few weeks ago for the first time, sitting down in depth and really watching it, and I can understand why it was so terrifying, especially for the time that it was made. You want to go a little bit into that, like why you feel it was so terrifying at that time?
In the time era it was made, that was just the 40s, and it was a boy. But what terrified me about it, well, I was over a friend's house, and he was hanging out with a chick and Whitaker. I wonder if she's going to see this podcast, but we were watching it over from her house. And afterwards, she drove me home. I was like 15 or 16. She drove me home, and when we pulled up to the house, I opened the car door and I refused to get out of the car because I thought that girl, Linda Blair, was under the fucking car. All right, it just scared. It hit me. I didn't realize I was in fear until I opened the car door when I got home. That, yeah, you never forget shit like that.
Oh, definitely. And there was a lot of controversy surrounding it. I mean, I know that prior to me watching it, which really is what inspired me to watch it, I was watching some interviews from way back in the day when it was first in movie theaters, and seeing the reaction from the audience. People were passing out, throwing up. running away in fear. Is that something that you witnessed like firsthand?
I didn't. I mean, I heard report. I would read that in the paper. In that time era and stuff like that. It kind of made me want to watch it, but my parents were like, "No, you're not effing watching that. It's blah blah blah." The thing about that movie is there are three parts. Now everybody was like, "Oh, part two was terrible," and at on glance, I thought part two was terrible. It's called The Heretic, and part three was really good.
Yeah.
But part two, and obviously the second and third one weren't so real, based on true story. But the second one was about the heretic, and it was about the spirit, how it comes, the demonic spirit, how it gets to this country, and it comes from Egypt or some Middle Eastern country in a box. And a lot of people, I didn't understand what ancient demonic, spirits were about until later on. Now, do I still think that movie's okay? No, but the premise of what they're talking about is really, really true to form. If you study ancient demonic behavior and spirits and stuff like that, it's big time. It was even more prevalent then.
Oh, definitely, definitely. And so in a weird way, if you watch Stigmata mirrors The Exorcist, but on a completely different perspective, on a different side, and it never really clicked to me till just now.
Well, Stigmata, again, that is kind of close because later on I lived up in Pennsylvania, north of Pittsburgh, or still in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And what that movie is about is possession, and she was literally writing out under possession, writing out in Aramaic, the extinct dialect of Aramaic that Christ only lived or spoke in. She was writing the scribe of Timothy on the wall regarding religion that has been a big controversy in religion. This is where it gets really scary because when you mix religion and demonic behavior and encounters and stuff like that, and exorcisms and all that, it really gets downright terrifying because they'll show virtually everything, Legion and all these other demons show themselves. And Stigmata talks about you don't have, Lost Ring of Timothy said that you don't have to go to church to enter the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven's all around you, and that became a big, for Catholic churches and stuff like that dealt with money, and they require, they depend on people to come to their buildings and stuff. It was sacrilege.
Yep.
And so they thought that was, that was, of the devil, writing of the devil.
Yeah, definitely. And then you said that your other favorite movie was Nightmare on Elm Street. Why was Nightmare on Elm Street your favorite movie?
Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th. Sorry, my bad.
The movie in itself, the acting was like blah, 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 blah. The idea of having Jason running around killing people was, okay, that's another storyline. What gripped me was at the end when the mother showed who she was in that room at the end, that scene at the end, where you could virtually see her turn to evil in her eyes. And then he showed Jason drowning in the, in the leg, became crystal leg. And those two scenes right there, they burned a spot in my brain. I never forgot the look on the mother's face. She's wearing that sweater with the turtleneck, and she's going after the guy. Or after the girl. That was scary. I mean, it just scared the living shit out of me. And, I'm like, because it's a real person, not possessed, but in a psychotic sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It shows like the real nature of human beings at times. That's pretty insane. What did you think about the other Friday the 13th?
Yeah, I didn't really watch it. It wasn't that I was afraid, but I'm pretty sure that when you get that that first that hit from that first movie, all the other ones are going to fail in comparison. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
Or draws
One,
true fear, not horror movie fear, like true fear in your soul. You know what
yeah,
I mean? And
yeah,
there's reasons why I believe it opens a lot of doors. You know what I mean? It opened a lot of doors later on in life for me on what we're going to talk about paranormal and stuff like that.
yeah,
You know, having
definitely.
that deep down fear. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. One movie that I found that was really awesome is a psychological thriller, and I'm pretty sure you've seen it. It's Seven
Oh yeah,
with Brad
yeah,
Pitt and Kevin Spacey.
yeah.
That movie was insane.
Well, this morning it was weird because I knew we were going to do this podcast, and I stepped into the kitchen for something. I came back into the living room, and she had on the prophecy with Christopher Walken, which is an 80s movie, and it's really
Yeah,
whacked out. I'm like, geez, we're going to do this today. I mean, yeah, she's all in to this time of year. I mean, we got crystals around the house, outside. You know, our storage room, half of it's full of, Halloween decorations. I get it. I like it. But I mean, she's way off the charts with it.
yeah. I think this is my favorite time of year, to be honest. I love Halloween and I like Christmas, but there's something weird about the Halloween season. Weird, spooky shit happens around the Halloween season that you don't really like. You don't really get any other time of year. You know?
Now, the only thing I don't like about this time of year is that it implies that winter and snow's coming, right? Except snow. But other than that, I like the weather and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. And it's weird. Like up here in Alaska, we actually had the leaves changing colors this year, which never happens. They usually go from green to dead and falling
Yeah,
off.
right. Yeah.
So
But
this year
yeah,
we had the reds, oranges, yellows. It was beautiful.
yeah. Yeah, my thing is, yeah, I can say this about each season, and this is the season over which is very true. The How you doing, favorite down? But this time, you can say this time of year or spring or this or that, but here's the bottom line. Paranormal and spirit activity doesn't pick a season.
Yeah,
It's
very
happened to
true.
me every season. You know what I mean? And
Absolutely.
that's the shit that's scary. Hopefully we'll get into that later.
Yeah. And what's going on, Paper Towel? You guys can't see the comments rolling through. I got to figure out how to actually have these comments showing through on the camera. But, anyways, Paper Towel says, "Howdy, what's up? Welcome to live. Welcome to hanging out and getting spooky with Sean." So, Dad, let's get into it. What was your first realization that paranormal, like, is probably real?
Well, there's a series of events that led to real, the realization of, growing up. I think I told you this story. Growing up, I was a kid, real small, like 4 or 5 years old. My mom used to, have tarot cards, the Ouija board laying around.
Yeah.
And when she decided one day she was getting out of it, and when she did, she just disposed of the tarot cards. Later on in life, I found out that's bad
Oh yeah.
because it ended up having a lifelong effect doing that. I remember monkeying around with Ouija board. I didn't know what it was. I was a kid monkeying around with it, going because I seen her and her friends going when I was a kid. Yeah, I was monkeying around with it, and I've had some real weird shit happen. And I asked you questions as a kid, and then stuff like that. And then there was another time, as I was older, I was in my teenagehood, and me and my brother and a friend of mine and his brother, Billy Good, and his brother, we had like the seance in his woods up at his house. We didn't know what the fuck we were doing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And when you when you fuck around with things you don't understand, shit's gonna happen. And even if you do know what you're doing, you watch what the hell you're asking for, because you certainly don't get it. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
And yeah, I mean, there, in between those two incidents, I remember I could see things out the corner of my eye, and I'd look and it wasn't there. I think a lot of people would experience that. And then growing up, living in the area I live in, with the legends of the Blair Witch, okay, which is not far from me now, and the Goat Man. And you can look in Maryland Legends book. There's a book like that floating around on the internet where it talks about the Goat Man. And I don't know if it talks about the Blair Witch, but Bunny Man. I didn't know much about the Bunny Man, but the Goat Man was certainly something you feared whenever you walked through the woods.
Oh, definitely, definitely. And going back to that situation with Grandma, where you talked about her messing with stuff. I ended up finding that story out when I was 16 years old off of an experience in my own. I had an experience, and I was freaked out, and this is when I was living with her, and I ran into her room, and I told her about it. And she was like, yeah, I know. And then she went in to tell me about everything, just about everything. She didn't tell me about the Ouija board, but she told me just about everything, and about the tarot cards. And it really didn't like resonate with me. It didn't really sit with me, and I wasn't like, oh, this is weird. What ended up happening was through time, through learning different things within the paranormal community, I found out she kept that doorway open. Like she didn't close it. She got rid of it. She ended up burning the cards, and you just left this doorway wide open. Which on not only is it bad on the person that started it, but it kind of falls in the bloodline too.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and then we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Later, but yeah, she had from that point on her demonic being that she said she saw no matter where she went.
Mm-hmm.
And over a period of time, she didn't see it anymore. And first I'm thinking that you need to be on medication. I have no fucking idea what you're talking about. And then as I got older and I had experiences and stuff like that, I understood. I at least believed. I didn't see it, but I at least believed. You know what I mean?
Yep. So Juan, a good buddy of mine, Juan Gregory, he was a guest on Sitting with Sean. He says, "What's up, Sean? Good morning, Mr. Young." He's talking to you, Dad.
How you doing, Juan? Good to see you. Glad you're here. You ain't got that. We haven't talked about the real heavy stuff yet, so you didn't know a whole lot.
Yeah,
I'm a timely person. Sean will tell you, I'm a timely person.
Yeah. So he's much like me. I'm much like him. Sorry. My dad's a storyteller, and so am I. And the second thing you talked about was messing with things that you don't really understand. And I know that I had experiences because I started messing with things that I never really understood when I was in my 20s, and that did some damage on me as well. What kind of like psychological shit did that put you through? Like I know that you said you've seen stuff in the corner of your eyes, but did it start like psychologically messing with you?
Yeah, it was psychological messing with me. Like in between those two periods where the seance at the time, when I was a kid, we were at a babysitter's. We went to babysitters every day, and me and a couple of the other kids we babysat. We were going to go outside and play. We would go out and literally the lady's backyard, her gate, she had a fence, and the other side of the yard was the woods in the area. So we'd go out that back gate and we go in the back, and we go out in the woods. We had a little, not a tree house, we had a little ground area where we hung out at and everything. We kept stuff there. And one day, and again, I'm living in fear because I knew about ghosts, but I didn't
Yeah.
want my friends, at the time to think that I was nuts. So I never brought it up, but it did a lot of, I was psychologically, it was terror.
Yeah.
And we went around, investigating the woods, and all of a sudden, there's an abandoned house in the middle of it. And there's an abandoned old truck that's rusted out, and no, obviously no one living in it. And when you talk about the Blair Witch movie, I didn't necessarily care about it or the acting, but it hits home because I've encountered, abandoned houses in the woods before, and you don't know the real fear. I don't even think the concept of putting that to cinema uh, describes the amount of fear you feel when you see something like that. I'm not. Hey, Chris, here's my buddy Chris Adams.
What's up, Chris? How
Uh,
you doing, brother?
so I don't know if camera or anything like that can describe the amount of fear when you already got a psychological fear knowing all the stuff that's happened, and then you see something like that. The idea of the Ghost Man or the Blair Witch was in my mind long before that stupid movie came out. I call it stupid. It scared some people. You either liked it or hated it. I didn't really care one way or another. I just know the fear
Yeah.
and the psychological damage, fear that real fear. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, and you mentioned Blair Witch Project. That movie is a movie that has scarred me for life. Obvious
Yeah,
for many.
we have a story about that.
Yeah, yeah. Obvious, and we'll get into that later. But it scarred me for life because one, we grew up 20, 30 minutes from that Burkittsville sign. When I came back home and I last year, I drove by it. And I sat in Burkittsville, and I've never done that before, and it was crazy to go see some of the filming locations. But
Yeah,
uh,
I live 15 miles from there now. You
yeah,
know what I mean? I used
hmm
to drive to and from work and past it every day.
yeah. And it also created for me an unhealthy fear of the woods at night. But more, I guess it would sit
Yeah,
along the.
you wouldn't go in the woods.
Fuck no, no, I'm not messing with woods at night. But it created that unhealthy fear of the woods at night, but more of the fear of the unknown, which
Yeah.
is wild. Kendra Brown says once you've accepted you have sensitivity or clairvoyance, it's not so scary. Pay attention to the messages. Yeah, we'll get into that later. We'll get into
Yeah,
that later.
yeah. Yeah, that's Kenner. She's another good friend of mine. I've known her since high school, but she has a lot of good perspective of things. And yeah, we're going to get into it right now. We're talking about the fear and not having the knowledge, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
Yeah, but yeah, she's right.
yeah. Go into a few minutes ago. You talked about Ouija boards and like messing with Ouija boards. When I was growing up in school, when I was in Wayne and East, people talked about messing with Ouija boards and the effect that it had on them, and I just looked at them and I was like, why would you ever expose yourself to that shit? Like, why would you do that?
Yeah.
And so now, even now, when people say, "Oh, I'm gonna go talk to a spirit board" or any of that, I'm sorry, I'm not messing with it.
I'm not fucking with it either. I mean, I had a bad experience unknowingly as a 4 or 5 year old. I'm good.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
good. I know. What creatures. I mean, I know when and when not to do stupid shit. I mean, some of my friends wouldn't agree with that statement, but I know in the spirit world, paranormal, when what not to fuck.
yeah. Definitely. So moving forward, you had that encounter with the goat man, and you seen that abandoned building. What happened in that building, or did you go to the building?
No, we went to the doorway,
Mm-hmm.
and you had the proverbial creepy steps. It's abandoned house, woods, and everything else. It's in Bladesburg and everything else, and that I'm not on camera with, but you have all those things, and I already had a fear from other incidents. So I didn't go in. We didn't go in. We went up to the door, and then we looked at each other and said, "We're going to open the door." And my buddy Alan goes, "I'm not opening that door." He goes, "Hi." I said, "Well, we're not going inside and getting the fuck off the porch." So we went back. And from then on, I knew where the house was. So we just kind of, uh, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, Ken.
right. And so, uh, you know, my guys was telling me I was being stupid. I'm not fucking around there. But I always kept, I always looked at that house out before my eyes. From that point on, I developed like this mental perimeter. I wouldn't go inside a certain distance to that house. And it's in the woods for a fucking reason. You know?
Yeah. Axe Murder Hollow.
Wow.
From Chris.
Pretty hard.
Yeah, we talk about creepy ass buildings. There was when we lived in Erie and we lived on 11th. There was that building. If you go out that house, if you go out the front door, and there's that brown building to the left with that oak tree in the front of it. That house, just standing there, because I'd never seen anybody live in it. I'd never seen anything, nobody around it. That building alone scared the shit out of me every time I looked at it.
And there's like maybe 3 windows on the first floor of it. It was really weird.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
It looked like a Jeffrey Dahmer house or some shit. You know?
Yeah, looked like a house that I'm not going into.
Yeah.
Fuck that. Nope. So moving past that, what was another solidifying experience when you were younger that kind of was like, okay, this shit might be real?
I mean, there were so many incidents, small incidents that I at the time just kind of overlooked until later on in life. Are you talking about my younger years?
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's times where I'd be walking like down the street and I'd see a person cross the road and I'd just kind of glance away real quick and look back and they're gone. I was starting to see stuff like that and I had no explanation for it, but I kind of just, I ignored it. I didn't want to know what it was. There was an incident when I was like in the early 90s in Harper's Ferry. At Jefferson Rock, where a bunch of us were going up there on the rock. We would go up there at night parties and all that. And there had been a colonial days, or where they dressed up in during the Civil War era. And we were up at Jefferson Rock, and we were drinking and doing our typical whatever. And me and my buddy were standing by the pathway, which is only about 50 feet from the rock. And there was a man and a woman standing there, and these old Civil War clothes, and like the bell dresses and stuff like that. And she had an umbrella, and the guy standing there with a top hat. I said, "Hey, what's up?" I looked at my buddy. I said, "Hey, look at this, guys. Look at these 2 guys." And I turned back, and they were gone. And there was no sign of them. And Harper's Ferry is very haunted. There's a lot going on there. And, down the road, I mean, if you go up that path, there's a cemetery. We're out there in the evening before stuff, and we stay out there sometimes. And, I turn around there again, we just, drunk, whatever, I'm high, whatever. And I just kind of tried to ignore it. I used to tell a story, but I never took it very serious. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was odd.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, and you and I have shared some of my experiences, and I won't get into that. I'll probably share mine later on another broadcast. But the crazy thing is that whole area between Sharpsburg, Harpers Ferry, Frederick, all super haunted. Super haunted. And
a lot of people died during the Civil
Oh yeah, definitely. And then not to mention, like you got the two waterways there. You got the Shenandoah River, and you got the C&O Canal that intersect right there at the heart, or at the base of Harper's Ferry.
You got
And so, yeah, Potomac. Yep, yep. And and so that is like in the paranormal world, they believe that water is a conductor of supernatural energies. Do you believe that?
oh, sure. I mean, it's funny. Most of my experiences have been like much like today. It started out sunny and got a little cloudy today.
Hmm.
And before I came down there to turn on the computer to do the podcast, I walked across the street because I mean we live on a mountain, and our mailbox is across the street. Coincidentally enough, there's a little cemetery there. I live across from, and it was cloudy, and then you can tell you become knowledgeable on when something may happen. Not that it will, but the air is right for it.
Yeah.
And when I went outside today and everything, and I'm walking, you can't help but look at the little cemetery and look up and down the country road, and all of a sudden I felt that. The air is right. I was like, oh shit. And then I came back in and I heard a bunch of noise down here, and I started, oh no, not today. Shit, not today. And then I came down and you were getting ready on the other end, so and I had the speakers up, so I was like, oh, okay, that's it. So,
It's spooky season.
that's right. It sure is.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So a little bit later on in your adult years, did you experience anything when you moved up to Erie?
Well, yeah, I mean, I experienced some stuff. I have a friend, Jill, that lives in the town next to Erie, in northeast DC.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not DC, northeast PA. And she used to have a friend, this guy friend that came over, and he would go out in the back and pull weeds in the garden,
Yeah.
in her garden bed. And he had died, like the day before. And I didn't know that, and I was going over to visit her and all and whatnot. And when I turned the corner to go to her house, you can see her house when she turned the corner. I started to turn into her driveway. All of a sudden, I saw this person
Yeah.
walk across the yard, and tall, kind of skinny guy, gray hair, standing, and I could see him vivid enough. And I went inside. I said, "Hey, when did this place become a throughway for people to walk through your yard and out the back? Is there like a throughway on another street?" She goes, "No, why?" And I told her, and she just got this look and started bawling. She goes, "That's my friend that just died."
Wow.
And it wasn't haunting. He was just probably coming by to say goodbye, and that happens a lot. A lot of people, take it the wrong way whenever they may see something, like Ken was saying. And he was probably just saying he's okay and goodbye,
Yeah.
And that was freaky, man. It really, that was one instance.
Wow. So I know the house we lived in Erie. I have a particular group of experiences that happened in that house. Did you experience anything in that house?
I experienced knockings around, and you know, um, the garage had some sort of significant meaning. Every time I looked out the kitchen window, because the garage was in the back of the house, separate building, and it was facing the other street. And my eyes were always drawn to that door, and then the window on the right, because there was a window on the right and the left, the window on the right, and the door.
Yeah.
I didn't know what all that was about, but I know that you had some sort of experience.
Yeah. So one day Rich and I were home, and it was during when we were doing summer theater, and we're upstairs in my room, and it was in the middle of the day, nobody was home. Nobody, like the neighbor, the elderly neighbor that lived next to us, she wasn't home. and obviously the lady to our right always stayed inside. And yeah, and we heard clear as day talking below us, and Rich and I looked at each other and we're like, "Are you gonna go down and check that out?" And we collectively said no, fuck that. But that was one of my first experiences in that house, and then in the basement. I hate basements, which is weird because right now we're recording live in my basement.
And I'm in my basement.
And you're in your basement. There was a section of the basement that was completely blacked out. You could not see anything. There was no light that would reach that spot. And one day I got brave enough and I went down there and I shined a light back there, and there's a mirror down there looking back. And it almost like, now looking back, it felt like somebody was scrying. Do you know anything about that?
So what? Say again? That somebody was like?
Was scrying, was staring into the mirror trying to conjure something up.
So many experiences happen. Tell the story. I'll probably remember it as you go.
Okay, so downstairs, you know how you had that workbench under the stairs. So Paper Towel said vaguely remember that. Anyways, so as you go down the steps, you take a right. There was that workbench over there that was, you know, it had the single draw light, and then there was that cutout to the left of that.
Yeah.
It was a small area, really super small area. I went down there. I had nasty feelings going down there. I hate basements. I hate attics, which, oddly enough, I've lived in both. But I go down there, and that area is completely blacked out. No light. I feel like no light has ever reached that place because there's no windows over there, no nothing. And I shined a light back there, and there was a mirror. You know, the small mirrors that, like, the standing mirrors? There's one standing, like, back there, and, like, pushed up against the wall. I don't know if you've ever been back there to see it, but that shit scared me.
Yeah, that there was an incident there. That mirror, we had put that down there, me and your stepmom. They put that down there, got it out because there was no room or whatever. And there was a time where I went back around the corner because I heard some weird noise and I was working. That's when I had the computer down there and everything. I was working on the computer. And I heard a noise, and I went, just kind of like, what the hell is that? And now there have been some time lapse in my life where I didn't have any incidents, at this point.
Yeah.
And I went around the corner and I looked, and I saw two red eyes in that mirror. And I was like, well, I'm going over here. I'm turning the fucking kid. Nope, better yet, I just went right upstairs. I some things are better left uninvestigated, and that was probably one of them. I didn't want no parts of it,
Definitely. And I can only assume that's why the computer moved upstairs.
That's right.
Yeah, so Erie, definitely. Erie was one of those places where it wasn't a lot happening that I noticed, but there was a lot, like Strong Vincent, when we were doing our summer theater there, we definitely had some weird experiences there, but nothing that I was like, okay, that's weird. Like we would hear, some of the theater chairs duck down and hear some scampering around, but it wasn't like anything crazy. Because Rich and I were generally the first two people there. We would always show up super early, and everybody else would kind of trickle in behind us. So we've seen some weird shit there, but nothing that really solidified anything. So what ended up happening after you moved away? I know you got back on the road, and you started driving again, and you drove out to Arizona. What happened there?
Well, you want to talk about that, or you want to talk about when I was living on Mill Creek?
We can do Mill Creek, yeah. Dracula Tomb in Erie Cemetery. I've never seen that.
Yeah, I mean, I want to get into the Arizona thing because, but there's an important part of my time in Erie that I think is worth mentioning.
Okay.
Uh, and you ended up involved from where you were at.
Uh,
Your uncle had died, and and he and I weren't on talking terms for a couple of years. And Chris, as a matter of fact, who's listened to the show, he, he and I were at the house, and the wife just left me, my ex-wife, and all that, and we were sitting there, and um, he no, she didn't leave, but he was there because he came down to the funeral, and this was the night before we were coming down, and I was sitting out in the mudroom, and we smoked out there, we didn't smoke in the house, and all of a sudden I looked out the one door, it was a storm door, and I saw, uh, 13 to 15-year-old version of my brother standing at the door,
yeah.
and that was freaky.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't scary, but it was the the spirit that presented himself to me was him when he and I were best friends, you know,
Yeah.
as teenagers, and that's how I chose to remember. And he presented himself to me. And then later on, when I called you and I said, "Hey, I texted you. I said, hey, there's this, you know, spirit out in the yard, and it was a black spirit, and you couldn't see because it was dark. Chris is over there again, and and it was a bad omen. It was an omen, and I believe that was the omen that followed your grandmother around for years, and um, and there was a protective spell done, and he couldn't get in, you know. But I think that was the last time I encountered that bad omen, a dark omen that followed, your grandmother
Yeah.
around.
Yeah. So some weird stuff that a lot of people don't know that I don't talk about openly. I talk about it after I've trusted people, but I'm good enough now to talk about it because I understand a little bit more. I have some abilities, and you do too. And you didn't know. Yeah, you had no idea what I could do, and I had never told you. Sorry, I'm adjusting my chair because my back. Anyways, so you had no idea that I had certain abilities that I could do, and we had never really talked about the paranormal or supernatural up to that point. And I was like, well, hey, by the way, I can do this. Let me see if it works. And let's talk about that a little bit. What do you in that experience, like what were you thinking when I was like, hey, I can do this? What was going through your head?
What, when that bad omen was there?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I didn't, it wasn't about me believing or not believing. I'm trying to keep my distance from this omen, and if whatever you could do at the time, you know, to make that happen, I definitely knew it was a negative energy. It
Yeah.
wasn't cool. And the thing is that, and I didn't know if I believed it or not, but then when you started, and you had never been to that house, and you started explaining the room that I was in, and that Chris was laying on the couch, and the stairs going up to the second floor of the house was right behind me, and I was sitting in a recliner, and all that, and even down to where the window placements were in the room, and I was like, whoa, and so then from there you did what you did.
Yeah. So for everybody watching that is hearing this for the first time and doesn't know what we're talking about, I can do this thing. It's called spirit travel, and it's where I tap into the energy of the other person that's on the other side wherever I'm going. and I concentrate my energy, my focus, and I'm able to pick out parts and bits of things, and then it's almost like you're waking up for the first time. Your eyes are slowly adjusting, and everything comes into perspective. And I had focused on my dad. I focused on his energy, and I started feeling the nasty shit around me. And I explained to him what each thing was like. Uncle was in the house, kind of watching over him, and then there was this darker energy on the outside, and I created this barrier, if you will, to prevent that entity from entering the house. And it's crazy because when I'm doing it, I'm talking to him as if I'm there, as if I'm sitting right next to him, and I'm explaining what his house looks like. I'm explaining what he's wearing, what Chris is doing, and then what these entities look like as they're being presented to me. And that's not, well, that was the first time I had done it, but that definitely wasn't the last time that I did it involving you.
There was that, I was more worried about that omen being present. And then after it all was over, I was like, wait, yeah, you did that. And then then I go, wow. And then you and I talked a lot more about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was pretty neat.
Yeah. And that wasn't the first time that I've ever done that. But I wasn't as proficient in it as I am now. Because I've done it a few times since, but I only do it under certain circumstances. And that was really just to prevent anything bad from happening to you or to Chris, because they obviously attach themselves to us, but they can affect everybody around us.
There's a lot of negative going on in my life at the time.
Oh, absolutely. And it feeds off that,
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel to a degree what happened when you were young with Grandma and what she was dabbling in really kind of trickled its way down the pipeline to me. And it affected you, it affected Gordon in different ways. So Kendra says, what made you try that? Just thinking about your dad and it happened. So, no, so essentially what happened was I tested around with this when I was younger, just a theory. Like, this could happen. It's a possibility. Our brains only, we only use about 10% of our brain. So what happens to the other 90, right? And so the first time I did it, I spirit traveled. I was in Afghanistan on a deployment. I spirit traveled to my house, and some things happened, and they were confirmed by my daughter's mom, which I was like, cool. I got validation that this works and that I'm doing this. So I did a few more times, and then I did it with my dad, and really, it's about going into a meditative state. I was on the phone with not texting him, but I was calling him, and I was talking to him real time as I'm doing it, and I'm in this meditative state as I'm seeing it like I said, just like I'm sitting right next to him, and I'm looking every which way, and
you were never writing that out.
I've never been to that house before. I didn't grow up in that house. I've never seen pictures of it, nothing. And so really what it was when I was getting into that meditative state, that deep state of consciousness or subconsciousness, whatever you decide to believe it is, I started really focusing on him and his energy and what was happening around him. And that's when I was able to go and, obviously I created this barrier around the house that prevented whatever out there from coming in and affecting him anymore. But I was also able to communicate with the spirit of my uncle, my dad's brother, and relay information to him as I'm getting it from my uncle. And I'm saying things like phrases that I don't say, that it would only be him saying. So that was further validation as to what I was able to do for him, because I believe now in my life, like I'm of service to other people, and I was of service to my dad at that time. Yeah. So after that, did that create some kind of at least a little bit of reprieve within the house?
For the short period of time, because I think 3 or 4 days later I was out there. But but
Yeah.
it wasn't due to spirits, it was due to certain.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, as far as an omen following me and all that, I never saw that again.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's good. That it served its purpose. Um, so moving forward into going on the road and going to Arizona, or at least the West. Like I know that you've told me about a few experiences that you've had in the West with an ancient native spirit and as well as some UFO activity. Would you like to get into first?
Oh boy, the UFO activity is well. Let's stay on the spirit thing, and then we'll go to
Okay.
alien. There was a time where I was done. I was in the Steve Depression and everything else, and I'm coming in out of New Mexico and I'm headed towards Tombstone, Arizona, and I know this rest area that had these rocks, and I decided I'm done. I'm gonna end this pain, all this, and too much has happened in my life. I can't recover. You know all the thing, all the self-hating things, tell yourself
Yeah.
all the things that make you stay in depression, and it gets worse. So I stop. I'm on this rock, and it's like all I have to do is jump, and I can land on a highway. And there's a lot of traffic at that point. I was wearing these cowboy boots, and um, and then all of a sudden I started losing my footing, and I looked over to my right, and there was an Indian spirit standing next to me. I fell backwards, cracked my back, and it messed my back up. I had back problems previous to that, but it re-aggravated it. And it was a Navajo elder, and I came later to know his name is Jose, which means father. And
Mm-hmm.
and they, I was little did I know that area of Arizona, New Mexico area was all what's called the Spirit House, and it wasn't my first encounter with them. I mean, it was my first encounter, but it certainly wasn't my last. And he was probably saving me from myself at the time. But it's heavy duty out there. You can feel it out there, and it's almost like it needs to be out there because there's a, regardless if you believe in aliens or not, we're talking paranormal. For me, paranormal is anything outside of our reality, what we know is reality.
Mm-hmm.
And there are aliens that visit that area. And I look at Navajo spirit as angels from higher being, good angels. And they walk that area to protect it,
Yeah.
and have that area to protect. So there was another time, though, that I encountered, well, a couple times. And I mean, even recently here,
Yeah.
Wednesday, he presented himself. But there's about a week or two later, yeah, I was yeah, I was in Lordsburg, New Mexico,
Yeah.
and um, all that area is a lot of desert plains and prairie, and it was real hot out. And I didn't want to be in the truck anymore. I was cooped up, but I'd been in that truck for 2 months, and then didn't go out, didn't want to talk to anybody, didn't want to be around anybody, and everything else. And I walked out past these tracks. I walked down. There's a desert. You can see there's an old ghost town. I mean, it looks like it's a couple miles away, but in reality, out there it's more like 20 miles.
Yeah.
And so I'm walking out, um, and it's hot. It's a little dusty, and I come across these two headstones down the middle of nowhere. These old ones, and I was like, that ain't cool till I started seeing like the desert animals, scorpions,
Mm-hmm.
tarantulas. I'm good. I don't need to mess with them. So I stepped back away from it, and all of a sudden, Shazay shut himself to me. And and he said there's, pretty much there's a reason why I'm there.
Mm.
And for people who don't believe that this stuff happens, I'm here to tell you it does. It changed how I perceive the world today. Um, I was I was taught a lesson that day, where if you're facing a ring, when you have a ring of fire around you, and inside that ring of fire are snakes, and you have to trust what's on the other side. In this case, it was Jose. He said, if you trust yourself in this world and me, then you will walk through the fire. Otherwise, you're going to die by these snakes. I'm here now.
Yeah.
And you never, ever forget that. It changes your perspective on things. It changes how you view the world and how you view reactions to people, how a lot of different things. It definitely left a mark. And at that point, he said he was to be he was going to be a protector.
Yeah.
And so that is a very deep moment, because there was a lot of loss in my life at the time. I had nothing left to believe in. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and it also in a ways changed who you are. Not necessarily who you are as a person, because you're always the root of who you are, but it changed how you live your life too. Because you after that, I noticed you started living more healthier, making healthier decisions. You stopped drinking as much, and you really learned to control the environment around you. Not necessarily control people, but control the environment around you. So if so, yeah, yeah, you started living in this reality of, if it's not peaceful, then I'm not about it. And I and so you created your own peace, and that's something that not very many people can do.
I'm still working on it.
Yeah,
Still
it
working.
it's a lifelong work.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't over with him at this point, or as me learning to work my life in that vein. Because the short couple weeks after that, I was driving up through Texas and I had a heart attack, and so they pulled me out of the truck in the rest area, and they found all this stuff. Uh, uh, yeah, hey, well, um, so when I had a heart attack, uh, I'm in Odessa, Texas. They had to transport me, 90 miles away down to Midland. There's nobody, no family, nothing, nothing. And when I get there, they have a heart team ready. They got to do a bypass. They got to put a stent in my widowmaker artery, and they wheel me across. They set me in an ICU room. Then they said they're ready, and they unlocked the wheels, and he started moving. He said, "We got to get you in here now." And there's nothing like coming right with yourself, and when you're faced with your own mortality. And so there's no one there to support me but me. I'm left with myself at this point. This is the symbolic part of it. I'm laying there looking, and they have me doped up, and I look off to my side, and Jose, he's walking next to the gurney. He said, and he walked right in the room with me. And, then they did the procedure, and I came to, and they're all clapping. I said, "What happened?" He said, "Well, you're moving around, and we gave you a little fentanyl, and you flatlined, and we had to bring you back to life." When you hear that you died, and you had these encounters with the paranormal, especially an elder, Navajo, Indian, your perspective certainly changes on how you I crack jokes about I hate the world, I hate people, I hate this and that, but I kind of make fun of that as my past life.
Yeah.
You have a different perspective on things.
Yeah.
You just and you say what's best for me, what's easy for me, what's this and that. There are reasons why spirits exist, and they present themselves to people. And uh, yeah, 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 you're right, Chris. Yeah, that's true. Um, you know, when you have spirits are there, whether they're good or bad, for different fucking purposes. Indian Navajo is definitely a good. Uh, I consider them to be angels from, if you believe in God or whatever. They're angels of. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he's definitely done. He's changed my perspective as well.
Yeah. So I'm gonna hit two of these comments up. So Walter said, uh, here's this comment. It says, "I've had experiences about since about 5 years old. However, there have been a few that were absolutely hair-raising events that, as a person of science, I can't explain specifically." Exactly. That's what the whole paranormal is about. Is we'll never have the answers. So we'll never know why, what, when. Which is why
When
these
you
are.
when you look at stuff like they have shows out now, the Legend of Skinwalker Ranch, where they try and scientifically explain what's going on. They're doing these experiments and everything else. Then you have this, about aliens, okay? And Navajo skinwalkers first to use Indians, the skinwalkers, and that whole area is infested with it because the
Yeah.
Ute Indians tried to enslave the Navajo. So when you and not and then that became a bad omen. They say then that's when UFOs started visiting that area, and aliens started visiting that area, unexplained cattle death. When you look at it like that, and they try and explain it scientifically, then you look at the other end of the spectrum, and you got a series show called Resident Alien, where an alien walks amongst people, and you have a few people that can actually see the alien versus the person form he's taken. And there's all this comedy. There's a lot of truth in both of them, but where is it?
Yeah.
That's, you know, where
Yeah.
is the truth? You know.
Absolutely. And then the next comment, Chris says, Rich, I think this experience gave you clarity. You've always had spirituality.
I learned spirituality a long time ago. I just did. I could spit it out, and I could certainly give you all the advice in the world you wanted regarding spirituality. But to live is a whole different thing. Uh, is a whole different thing regarding, uh, you know, putting it forth into motion as your everyday part of life. I see Dwayne's or Damon's comment, Walt's comment, and he and I talked about that. It says I avoid ancient Indian site like the plague, like Chico Canyon. We talked about that. I mean, like he knows about my time driving through Death Valley, uh, and my time seeing on a place called Walt has an interesting perspective because he grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and he saw that stuff probably more so than I, and as far as ghost towns and stuff like that, those places are what they are for a reason. They aren't you leave them the fuck alone. You know what I mean? And I see shows about ghost towns, and I'm like, people don't know what world you're opening. You know,
Yeah, definitely.
there's a
Definitely.
lot of
Because,
good and evil. You know,
yeah, because there's a lot of different spirits that not just regular spirits, but you got demons, you got ancient spirits, you got Native Americans that could inhabit that. You also got elementals. It's just crazy what you could encounter there, and a lot of people are like, "Oh, this is interesting," but you're putting yourself at risk at that point.
yeah, yeah. I mean, when you talk about paranormal, people like to go, it's interesting and all that, and it's neato and all that. Unless you understand paranormal, uh, and unless you understand paranormal, uh, and understand that there is a good and a bad and an identifier, and you're you're chosen to learn something. You're not chosen to sit there and dictate what it's going to do. We still try and do that. And well, it's funny. We've made sarcastic comments like that before about demons, but you know, I've seen a lot of that, a lot of paranormal out in your area. And when I was on the road, we had an experience where Shazay played a big role in helping you out when
Yeah.
you're up in Atlanta.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I had an experience up here, and my wife had an experience. Well, we had experiences in our like together, which is it's very rare to have experiences together of the same caliber. And I called you and I said, "Shit, I don't know what to do at the moment." And you said, "Well, let me see what I can do." And I don't know what you did, but it worked.
Well, there's contact to Shazay, and they have, when there's a bad demon and all that, it's known if you know about Indian spirituality and history. There's a warrior, and there's something that happened up at your house where you said there's something in a room,
Yeah.
and all I did was I summoned Shazay, and he appeared up there because I guess they cover the family too. It's a family plan,
It's a
and
family plan. It's a
and
package
then
deal.
then you heard a bunch of noise actually, by the window at the back, and there's woods out there, and you heard a lot of ruckus out there, and they're probably them warding off a lot of, you know, there's probably a little battle going on, but you live in an area of the world, Alaska,
Yeah.
that's a wide open area for aliens, paranormal activity. It's insane. Like the
Yeah.
movie, the movie. When we talked about movies earlier, the one thing that definitely floored me, scared me, was The Fifth Kind. And
Yeah.
that's filmed in what, Nome, Alaska, or something like that.
Yeah.
And
Juno, and Gnome.
that's regarding alien abduction.
Yep.
And to see some of the actual live film footage, split screen with the acting, it was staggering to watch. You know what I mean?
Oh, oh, absolutely. And that's something that has like really, really kind of been like a thought in the back of my brain is like that. But also, I mean, we've had there's a video where Men in Black showed up at this lady's work, and there's no audio to it, but she had a gun, and she pulled it out, and then out of nowhere, like you see her in this fixed trance. You don't see these guys. You see them walking around, and then you see like them out of sight of the camera. And she drops this gun, doesn't grab her purse or nothing, just walks out. And that has always been like a thought in the back of my brain, like, holy shit, this is
Yeah,
real.
yeah, definitely.
Um,
And
oh no, go
I
ahead.
mean, we're gonna. I guess this is really leading us into alien. And I've had my share, not up close encounters, but
Yeah.
the Southwest and parts of California, Death Valley area, that is definitely one. And most of my encounters were either in the middle of the night or right around dusk. And when you're going out across the low desert there on 10, anybody who's been out there that's listening, they know what I'm talking about, or lives out there, they know what I'm talking about. You look at some of the mesas, and when you have an experience where you see an unidentified flying object right in front of you, you start wondering what the mechanisms are in these mesas. But you see all these towers on these mesas, and you're like, what's the deal? And out towards White Sands Missile Testing Site, Dan Walton and I have talked about that. There's certainly been sightings out there, but I personally um, saw I was coming across the desert out between Las Cruces and Lordsburg, New Mexico, across the south. And there's a small, tiny town, I don't even know the name of the town, but it's like roughly, again, 20 miles. You can see 50 miles, across the flat desert plain. And there's a town, that's out there. There's an exit board that tells you the name, and then you travel about 20 miles off the beaten path, and you're there. I was coming up on that area one night. It was like 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, and I traveled this road, a lot. So I got to know this road a lot, and this area of the country a lot. And it was never lit up, never this. You'd see little lights here and there. Maybe a convenience store, lights open and this and stuff. This particular night I was coming across and I saw a round set of lights hovering maybe not even a quarter mile in the air over top of this town. And this dust rising up everywhere off the ground. And there's no way you can tell me that was anything other than a UFO. And it was the scariest fucking thing. I did everything. And my truck, ran pretty fast. I didn't have a slow truck. And I got out, and it's like I couldn't get away from the area fast enough. There was some weird sense I'd never felt before. And I looked at it, and I couldn't take my eyes off of it either.
Yeah.
And there's other times, like in Death Valley and out in the middle of Arizona, by Pikachu Mountain, where I could see, it was anywhere from Tucson going down to Nogales. I've seen flying things that did things that you're not supposed to do in the air. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they definitely do.
Yeah. Yeah, and why do you think the desert is such a hot spot, or the West or the Midwest is such a hot spot for paranormal activity?
I couldn't tell you. I have government theories, like a lot of people, but not necessarily something that's suited for this show. Topic. But all the way up to Utah and parts of Colorado, and that whole area, there's different bases. Like Skinwalker Ranch talks about, that's a basin. That whole valley is a basin. And so, is it that? I don't know. I have no idea. I know that it's extremely uncomfortable to see something like that. What their purpose is for being here, I have no idea. I've been by the exit for Area 51, 193, going between Vegas and Reno. No joke. I don't even fuck around out there. I've been up to ghost towns up that way. They actually have tourist ghost towns. I've been up by through there, but anywhere, I'd like to say anywhere where there's paranormal activity, you're gonna find UFOs, but that's not true. I think Indian spirits walk those areas predominantly because of the amount of alien activity, and they're here protecting. You know what I mean? It's a
good theory.
It's
a good theory. I had my own UFO experience, which up till a few years ago I never believed in aliens or UFOs or whatever however you deem to recognize them. And I called you right afterwards, and because we had been in that time talking about paranormal stuff. We don't always talk about paranormal stuff when I call my dad. Like, I'm not like, hey Dad, I seen a ghost today. It's more like, it's a situational call, and so what happened was, I live on an Army base, Air Force base. It's a joint base, and so to drive from my house to get to like a gas station or to like the grocery store, I have to go by these sets of woods. Now, I've had 2 experiences on that road, and they've definitely left me just like you. I was speechless. I couldn't take my eyes off of it. And so the first experience is I'm driving down the road, and it's just woods on both sides, right? But you can clearly see right in front of you. And I turn the corner, I go over this bridge down, and I'm going on a straightaway, and I see these 3 lights in the sky, man. And it's like a triangle, literally like a triangle. And I'm looking, I'm like, dude, that is abnormal. Because like you said, when you drive a road long enough, you get to know every feature of that road, what the sky looks like, everything.
Yeah.
And like, so I see this triangle in the sky that looks just like this, and it's up in the sky, and boom, just disappeared, just like in the flash of an instant, like that. It just boom, took off. Now, I've seen all of the jets that we have up here. I've seen all the fighters we have up here, aircraft. None of them do that.
Right.
None of them stall in the sky like that and just boom. So that was definite. And I called you and said, "Oh, guess what I just seen?" And I didn't know you had your experiences with UFOs, and so we talked about that a little bit. And then the second experiences I had was on that same road, but there was a bunch of side roads that lead out into the middle of the woods on base here, and some of these roads are like a football field length. Others are miles stretch, and so like I'm driving by, and it's a misty, foggy night, and it's setting the tone, whatever. But there's lights. And I can't tell you how many lights because I couldn't count. I was just in complete shock. But there were lights that were, I don't know if it was emanating from the ground up or from the sky down, but there were beams just all on my right side on this road. And I was just sitting there staring. And I had some people here. Like I think I had Michelle with me. I had her sister. And I said, "Do you see that?" Yeah. And they're like, "Oh yeah." And I'm like, "That is not fucking normal. I've been here long enough. That is not normal. I've never seen that any night. I've traveled that road enough at nights to know that that's not normal."
Right.
And then when I was driving back, which maybe 10 minutes later, they were gone. Absolutely gone.
Yeah.
Blew my mind.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, man. I traveled many, many thousands of miles, and I've seen more than 1 or 2 incidents, and you just kind of end up going, you know. Here's the thing. This is the only thing. There's a reason why they're releasing classified documents about this stuff. Okay.
Yep.
Because it can't be denied anymore.
No.
You know, when you got Navy fighters seeing objects, when you got commercial airline pilots seeing objects, when you got actual shows coming out about it, it's undeniable. You know, when I was growing up, I was like, "Yeah, it's funny." You know, you got these shows, and they're quirky, crazy people and all that. But until you visit Roswell, New Mexico, you don't really get it. Not that Roswell. You don't really understand it. This took over their life. When you see something that dramatic, you know, that's not of this world, it changes again your perspective on we're not the only ones here. You know, this is Halloween. That's definitely some scary shit. You know what I mean? Yeah. I love it. I do like the holiday and everything else, but there's a lot to be said. You know, in another podcast, we talked about that I watch the ID channel all the time, and you know, there's this big thing out that there's a series out about Jeffrey Dahmer. And all these people are watching it. They're, "Oh, it's a great series." I'm like, I already know the story. I ain't watching it. He's people, and he hid right in plain sight. There's a lot of, you know, we can have fun and watch the movies and have something scare the living shit out of you and all that. But, you know, some people appreciate the reality of this time of the year from having live experience happening right in front of them. Some people don't want nothing to do with it. Well, I'm not going to call them deniers or anything like that. I can tell you what I experienced, you know, and I can tell you it definitely changes a lot of the way you look at it. I mean, that's hard to explain beyond that, really. You know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. When you start stepping into that realm and you step away from like what we call reality, and you start stepping in that supernatural realm, I had to pull myself away for a few minutes, right? I had to step away from that and say, okay, like, because I got to this point where like I was all consumed with it. Like I was looking at things and trying to make things out of nothing, and it's not a way to live your life.
Right.
It's insane. So we're gonna dedicate this last 10 minutes to questions. If anybody's got questions,
Yeah, hold on a second. I got someone texting me. I'm going to go ahead and call her out right now. She's making fun of me. She's watching it's my friend Jill, the one who, and I'm not sure if she was on here. She told me to put the cigarette out and breathe and all that, but I don't know if she was on here listening when I talked about her friend. When I saw the ghost of her friend the day after he died when I visited her in Northeast. I told that story, Jill. Yeah, so there you go.
yeah. So we're gonna dedicate this last 10 minutes prior to shutting down to answer some questions. If anybody's got questions directed at my dad or to me, we'll go ahead and answer them. I'll pop them on the screen and we'll do that. But yeah, the experiences that you've had are pretty wild, pretty vast.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've had a lot of stuff happen in my life, including that. And
Mm.
I wouldn't change those situations or that experience, any of those experiences for anything in the world. Hold on a second. She said she heard that. Uh, but I wouldn't change any of those experiences for anything in the world. You know, uh, they definitely changed the way I view things. Uh, I'm not scared ghostly white. That is, it's funny how some of these horror movies they're great. Scared white, ghostly white, and all this stuff. That isn't actually how it happens. The newer movies actually are more in tune with what it does to you inside than the older movies. Like some of the movies that I like watching. Uh, growing up, real quick, as far as movies, one of the things that kind of drew my attention to horror, and I'm not a huge horror fan, certainly by not next to you, you love it. But growing up, I remember watching Evan Costello meet Frankenstein, and they had Frankenstein, the real Frankenstein. They had Dracula, the real Dracula, and the werewolf. And that's how they introduced those three characters to the household. Was through that, and I always liked the Wolfman because he was able to hide behind what he really was. There was a certain impressive mentality, whereas
Mhm.
Dracula was the narcissist, and Frankenstein was literally just a beast who was trying to misunderstood. And
Yeah.
that kind of drew me into those horror characters in itself. You know what I mean? I remember
Yeah.
saying
Yeah. I I like I like all horror, to be honest, but I like the horror movies that are too real to be fake. Like where situations are presented in those movies that it's too real to be fake. Like, okay, obviously we know that like there's not a dude out there dressing up in a pig's mask running around abducting people, putting them in torture devices, right? But the idea that could be real in Saw. Dude, when I first seen Saw, I was terrified. I had to go to work at McDonald's like when I lived in Erie, and I was looking in every alleyway for this fucking pig man.
that. Yeah, I know. I mean, that could certainly happen, but will it? Over, you got your Jeffrey Dahmers and your John Wayne Gacy's that roam the earth and Ted
Oh
Bundy.
yeah.
So, but when it came to it, real quick about Blair Witch, I had watched the movie, and that's when you were a kid. And we didn't tell this story yet.
No.
That you begged me to watch, and I said, "You don't know what you're asking. I don't want you to watch it." And you're like, "Come on," and you bugged me and bugged me and bugged me. I said, "Fine." But whatever happens, As a result of you watching that, blame yourself. And that's where you grew the healthy fear of woods. That's the exact reason why you won't go in the woods, because you wanted to see that movie, and that's what it did to you. You know what
Oh
I mean?
yeah,
That, for all the shitty acting in it and all that, that was as real as it gets. You know
yeah,
what I mean? You
yeah.
know.
And you had said I'm not watching it with you. You're gonna watch it on your own.
Yeah.
And so I sat in the living room. You kept your door open. I watched it. I didn't go to my room to go to bed. I slept on the couch with all the lights on. That was the initial shock factor for me. And then afterwards, I didn't fuck with woods, even to the point now where I don't go in the woods. And that's what it did psychologically to me. And it was it was terrible acting. You know, it was very riveting at the time for found footage, because it's the first found footage movie ever made. But it does something to people when you watch it, especially when you expose yourself to like certain movies. Like, I'm not going to sit here and damn Hollywood and damn movies and producers, but it does something to you when you watch those movies.
Well, what that movie did was kick the door open to movies like Paranormal Activity.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
And stuff like that. Now, do I believe a lot of it's put on? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Who's that cat? Is he from here? No. My friend Jill is texting me. That cat that's interviewing me, Jill, is my son, my oldest son.
Yeah.
Who is that?
Hi, Jill. You can't tell we sound alike.
She said she can't hear me very well. I think she's full of shit. But anyways, I don't care if we answer questions. Someone has a question, pop anytime. Other than that,
Yeah. So what a lot of people. Go
he
ahead.
told me shut up to me and hi to you. And then he said to tell you that your dad is stupid.
My dad's awesome.
Yeah.
My dad's awesome because I am my dad. Anyways, so I don't know if you know this or not, but the legend of the Blair Witch was inspired by the Bell Witch. Have you heard of the legend of the Bell Witch?
No.
Okay, so the legend of the Bell Witch takes place in Tennessee. I cannot remember the name of the town. Maybe it's Bell, Tennessee. I don't remember. But essentially, there was a dispute over some land from a woman and then a man, and the man had a bunch of. He had a big family, and so in order to pretty much get her pushed away from the area, he called her a witch. And naturally, in that time frame, if you're called a witch, you get burned at the stake, you get killed. And she ended up dying. She ended up getting put to death. And the whole family she put a curse on the land, or that's what they say. And so after that happened, wasn't Blair Witch based on a Hagerstown legend? Yes and no. So it draws some inspiration from Hagerstown, but also draws inspiration from the Bell Witch. But and that's what legends are now, right? So legends draw inspiration from other things. So Goatman, like there's legends of the Goatman all over the place. You know, Maryland, you got some in Texas, you got some literally sprinkled all over the place. In some areas they're called different names, but so they ended up casting this killing. The lady ended up getting executed, whatever. And the family started experiencing paranormal activity, and it's trickled down the bloodline as a curse. And it's just absolutely insane. There's caves that have been investigated that are underneath the land, and those have sacrificial remnants in it. You know, hair, locks of hair, trinkets. There's bones scattered all over the place. It's insane. It's insane, but there's also you know, there's also the lore behind it, and that's what all of legend is it's taking lore from different areas and making it your own. You know, the Blair Witch, the idea behind curses are absolutely a real thing. Oh yeah, I believe that. So
She's watching that. Yeah, I'm sorry to break this. Jill keeps texting me. I can't help but look down, and she goes, "Quit looking at my text." And gave that.
Crybaby Bridge, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Good old PG County one, yeah. There's
lots of road.
Yep. There's a lot of different crybaby bridges. I've heard about that. There's a lot of Devil's Roads, and it's really just legends of all of them. You know, with the Blair Witch in Maryland, the idea of the Blair Witch was that she had taken children and was essentially abducting children. And the original name of Burkittsville wasn't Burkittsville. But they changed the name. I don't know why they changed the name, but way back before the Civil War, it wasn't Burkittsville. And so she was taken, and she was put out in the woods, and they put honey and all kinds of stuff on her so that the bears could come and take her away. And the legend of the Blair Witch is kind of a thing, and it's sparked so much controversy around it. It sparked so much fear and anxiety. It's crazy. And so, yeah, I do enjoy a good scare.
Yeah.
But I don't go investigating.
Well, no. And so getting to the theme of Halloween, it's funny that fearful things or names or implications have been around my whole life, even in music. I listen to Slayer.
Yeah.
They write a lot of hard stuff. And, I grew up with a lot of that stuff. And I've always been there's always been a certain attraction to, like, Number of the Beast by Iron Maiden and stuff like that. Not that, besides the song being so well written, those songs or albums being well written, guys like King Diamond, everybody thought he was satanic, but he's not.
Yeah.
He's not. Chris just brought up something real quick. Let's address Walt real quick.
Yeah. Yep. So Walt said, if naysayers could experience just a few of the events I've experienced, most would shit themselves and make them question their own belief system. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. So, all right, Chris, shapeshifter. They're sort of like the skinwalkers. Shapeshifters, if they're the first or death curse or anything put on somebody, the Indian spirit, there's certain like witch doctors in Indian tribes that can take the form of anything they want and attack, and that's true. And real quick, I'm gonna step off camera, but come back. But it's even in the Aztec world, and I know that the Aztec, they dug up an area down in Mexico. They found a bunch of bodies, skeletal remains, and each one of them were holding this. Okay, I don't know if you see it.
It's not a bong, y'all.
Yeah, it's not a pipe. Y'all get that out of here. This is called an Aztec death whistle, and it's extremely hard to operate. But when you do, it sounds like a dying person screaming an ultimate death sound. And all of them were holding this, and it was believed that they were killed by spirits and demons.
Mm-hmm.
So I found one, and it's I've tried. They're hard to operate. That's pretty cool. They're pretty neat. I don't mess with this too much. I don't take this very lightly. It's just down here in this room because that thing has served a purpose. Oh, look, we got Jilly.
Yeah, Jill said, sorry, had to ride your dad's ass. I love this type of shit. Your dad and I talked about some crazy stuff like this. That drawbridge out in Fairview you were talking about is no joke.
Yeah.
Is that the drawbridge?
Uh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Fairview has some creepy shit. Jill's probably experienced far more stuff, whether it be paranormal and or spiritual entity stuff. And so those are pretty cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Those experiences are pretty wild.
Yeah.
I tend to like to give her a hard time and tell her she's crazy, but she knows I believe. You know.
Yeah. So we're gonna go ahead and wrap this up. And for anybody who's watching, I want to thank you guys for sitting here for this hour and a half, almost hour and 45 minutes, and hanging out with us. This has been fun. I always enjoy talking to paranormal and hearing people's stories, and especially my dad's, because he's got a lot of stuff that him and I have experienced together, but a lot of stuff that he's experienced on his own, and it's pretty awesome, pretty crazy.
Yeah. Hey man, like this is a Halloween season.
It's spooky season.
Yeah, and so I hope we provided some fun and everything else. And I'll probably go up now and look up that Costello meet Frankenstein. And that's good. But and then I'll probably have to trace out a whole bunch of Margaret's Halloween shit that takes up way too much space in the storage room. Decorate the place.
Yeah.
But it's no joke. It's no joke now that I live across from a cemetery. And
Yeah.
It's a sense of peace. It's a small cemetery. Yeah, and there's a sense of peace and protection.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to go ahead and end it, and I hope that you guys have a good day, and until next time, every time that I post up a video, or I'm going to go live, I'm going to put it on my page. I'll share it to my dad if he wants to push it out there for you guys to hear some more stories, some more spooky stories. That's what we're going to do. So I hope that you guys have a very nice Saturday, a good weekend. I have wrestling to watch later on, so that's what I'm going to be doing.
Yeah, I got probably some honey-do list crap to do, but happy Halloween, everybody.
Yep, happy Halloween, happy spooky season, and we will talk to you guys next time. Stay spooky.